Hello and welcome to Give Yourself Some Leeway, the brand new podcast for high achievers with me, Eugene Lee. Join me as I talk about all things from dealing with work-related stress, burnout, and reinforcing your physical, mental, and emotional well-being for a more sustainable and enjoyable work-life balance. I hope that you enjoy this episode, and if you do, please hit like and subscribe. So let's move on to what we'll be covering in this episode. So over the next few episodes, I'll be talking about the life-changing lessons that I've learned from my experience recovering from burnout and the unexpected journey it took me on. Now, I've learned an awful lot about burnout and about myself over these last few years on my burnout journey. For those of you new to my content, I initially burnt out back in 2019 with the onset of symptoms as far back as 2014, which should give you an idea of how early on you could identify symptoms of burnout to prevent it in the first place. But we'll get to that later on. So on this journey and the whole burnout recovery process, I've learned an awful lot about what burnout really is, what it means, how to recover, and I've also learned, amongst other things, just how isolating and alone it feels to go through the burnout recovery process. Yes, it can be raw, it can be uncomfortable, and it can make you question some of your core beliefs. But part of that process opens your mind and awareness to areas of your life where you probably didn't realize you were depriving yourself and those around you. So the aim of today's podcast is to share some of the things that I've learned in the hope that perhaps some of you might listen to this and recognize the symptoms within yourself and be able to do something about it. Or equally, some of you listening to this might find it helpful and avoid slipping into burnout in the first place. So if any of these things are achieved, then my work here is done. So for today's episode, what I've learned about burnout was probably the most difficult but equally life-changing lesson. And that's that recovery is hard, it's complex, it needs to be multifaceted, and it is nuanced. The important first step of the journey is realizing that recovery takes a lot of time. And it does take about 1 to 3 years on average. Recognizing that this requires a lot of patience and you will not see results immediately, but they tend to snowball over time. And again, if you do recognize early signs of burnout in yourself, it is critical that you take the steps to preventing your condition from getting worse. So if you can, take the time off and speak to experts, get professional help, and maybe speak to your GP. I guess one of the first and hardest steps to recovery is admitting to yourself that you are burnt out, because as a high achiever, you feel like you're failing yourself by admitting that you're burnt out and that you're not performing to your potential. But it is important to admit this so that we can improve ourselves. You may also need to look at possible stressors in your environment, be that at work, in your personal life, or maybe there are external circumstances that are actually out of your control. For instance, maybe you need shorter work days or less working hours per week. Or maybe there are stressful duties and responsibilities at work that don't give you fulfillment, at which point it may be useful to consider getting some career guidance. Now, I'm not telling you to quit your jobs or anything. I'm no career expert. I'm just some idiot on the internet for all you know, but if there are stressors in your life that are negatively affecting your health, it is worth investigating what these are and taking action to make your recovery journey easier and make your stress levels that bit more manageable. And if you feel like your job is not giving you fulfillment, and maybe you feel like you're stuck in a dead-end job, you have full permission to pursue whatever career fulfills you the most. And when you're starting your recovery journey, it does require patience and time. And if you need that extra space, it is something worth considering. I also want to point out that there are some suggestions that people may make on your burnout recovery journey that don't really work. So activities that focus on the individual in isolation, such as meditation, self-care, and mindfulness. While these are good for stress management, they won't get you out of burnout. Burnout is a state of mental and emotional exhaustion, so it is really hard to be mindful while you're in this state. So at first, focus on burnout recovery, and then when you want to manage your stress levels, you can start implementing your meditation and mindfulness practices. Now, I don't want to just flood you with loads of information on how to start your recovery journey and just confuse you with details. So here are a few key things that helped me start my recovery journey. The first thing was to take time off work and seek professional help. This was a major turning point for me, to admit that I was suffering from burnout, from pure mental and emotional exhaustion, and that I needed to take the time to seek professional help because I couldn't do this on my own. Next, I started working on myself personally, taking care of my physical, mental, and emotional well-being. So starting from eating a healthier diet, taking the time to get enough exercise in every week, even 10,000 steps a day, just getting that accountability to walk in nature, or even just walk around my home. Looking inward at my mental state and my emotional state helped me realize who I really was at my core and what areas I needed to develop to feel better about myself and the environment around me. And finally, working on my professional point of view, establishing where I saw my future career path and creating actionable steps towards pursuing that goal. By working out what my values are and working towards them, I rediscovered the enjoyment in my work and my personal life. This was an important part because it made me reconsider whether or not I wanted to stay in my current job, and helped me realize the parts that I found enjoyable and other areas that I was uncomfortable with that I needed to develop and work on. And I couldn't have done this without the support of my close circle of friends and a like-minded community, as a community is a tool that is often overlooked, but this can be a long, sometimes grueling recovery journey. And it is so much easier when you realize that the struggles and resistance that you feel right now, it has already been experienced by someone else in the community, and they can help you overcome these difficulties with their tips and advice. At first, I honestly felt so isolated, so lonely that, when I was going through burnout, it felt like I was the only person in the world dealing with this. It felt like I was letting myself down, that I had let my manager down and my team, my work colleagues, that I was a failure. But having been through it, I realized that I wasn't alone, and that there are a lot of us feeling like this at the moment, and there are still a lot of people struggling with burnout. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I started this with leeway.ie, was to open up a space for discussion, to help break down that stigma that's associated with mental health problems in the workplace, especially amongst high achievers, as we are more likely to perceive stress and burnout as a reflection of ourselves, of our own failings. And it's important for us to realize that it's not our fault. Burnout happens as a result of work-related stress. And without that prolonged stress, we wouldn't be burning out. Well, I hope you liked this episode and I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, subscribe to the show, because it makes sure that you don't miss out on new episodes. And it also helps me because it increases the rankings of the show a little bit, which of course makes it a little more easily found by other people who may like it just as much as you. And if you didn't like this episode or anything about the show in general, or if you have any ideas or suggestions or just feedback that you want to share, shoot me an email, eugene@leeway.ie, and let me know what I could do better, or just what your thoughts are on what you'd like to see me do in the future. I read everything myself. I'm always looking for new ideas and constructive feedback. So thanks again for listening to this episode, and I hope to hear from you soon.